Now joining me on the Oregon Man Clinics hotline is Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest of SI's Fan Nation. He's also the host of the Ducks Dish podcast. Max, thanks for being here to talk recruiting once again. We always love having you on.
Thanks for having me, Justin. You know, I can't get enough of the recruiting talk, so always excited to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we have you back every week, Max. So you talked to a couple of recruits recently that I want to ask you about. The first being Dylan Gresham. He's a 2024 wide receiver out of San Jacinto High School in California. Right up your alley there, Max. And he had some crazy junior season stats I wanted to mention. Over 2,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. That's pretty amazing. And you had a chance to talk to him in September, and you had a chance to talk to him last weekend as well. Has anything changed since you've last spoken to him?
Yeah, this was kind of a fun little interview that I got to do with the Oregon wide receiver commit from Southern California. He was in town for the Washington State game, so an unofficial visit up there in Eugene. And it's just kind of fun to check in and see, you know, what people are up to, what they think. And, you know, he enjoyed his trip, and he wanted to kind of go out there to soak up the game day vibes and picture himself out there at Austin Stadium. Told me he got to spend some good quality time with Jerion Dickey, Oregon's five-star wide receiver signee from the 2023 class. I think some people have been maybe a little surprised that they haven't seen him play a whole lot this year, but Oregon's wide receiver room is pretty loaded. So I think that's kind of where the reasoning lies. But he just kind of wanted to soak up the experience and see, again, what it would be like not when he goes to Oregon. And he was really impressed with the offense, calling it, quote, really explosive. And, you know, it was complimentary football is what he was telling me. So he really liked what he saw kind of just from the offense from the start to finish. And then I also always like to ask these commits if they're still getting recruited by other schools, despite their pledge to Oregon or, you know, whatever school they might be committed to. But he said that he's still hearing a little bit from Arizona and USC. And it was just funny how USC wasn't really that involved in this recruitment because he's a top playmaker from the Trojans' backyard. And I know that Oregon kind of feels like they found a diamond in the rough with Dylan Gresham. So he's locked in. He said he's pretty much shutting it down, his recruitment. And he's built a lot of relationships with commits like Aaron Flowers, Dakota Fields, Luke Moga, and Jordan Anderson. So all is good for Oregon with Dylan Gresham, and he's certainly a wide receiver that I'm really excited the Ducks are going to be adding to this roster when he gets to campus as an early enrollee.
Yeah, well, anybody with those stats, as I mentioned, is certainly someone that I'm interested in as well. And always good to see the Ducks keep recruits that they have locked in. We talked a little bit about five-star offensive tackle out of IMG in Florida, Jordan Seaton, last week, and you were able to actually talk to him after his visit. What did you learn from him?
Yeah, that was a huge trip for the Ducks and for Jordan Seaton, Justin, because he's a top 100 committed recruit in the country right now for the 2024 class. And it's funny to say that because Oregon just got a commitment from who had been the top uncommitted recruit in the country in the 24 class in Aiden Breland. So I think getting Jordan Seaton out to campus for an unofficial visit is huge. I wanted to emphasize that because I thought going into the trip that it was an official visit, but this is exactly why you interview the recruits, because you find out little tidbits that you maybe didn't know or aren't out there. And the unofficial part is huge because I think that means that they're going to try to get him back out for an official visit before he makes his college commitment. And he said that he is an early signing period guy, so that means that they have less than 2 months until more like a month and a half now, really, until he decides where he wants to play his college football. And the Ducks made a really good impression during this trip. I know that he has a good relationship with Alik Terry, and seeing that family environment from Dan Lanning was huge. This is a guy that the Ducks had been recruiting since he was at St. John's. They offered him over a year ago, St. John's out in Washington, D.C., and then he transferred down to the Sunshine State to play for IMG. But he also just was really, really impressed by the connection and relationships between the players and the coaches, saying it's, quote, one of a kind and that you can't find that at too many spots nowadays. So I think a lot of people get caught up in the flash and and just the uniforms and everything with Oregon. But I mean, since I started covering this team back in 2018 on the recruiting trail, the genuine nature of the coaching staff and just of Eugene always comes up. That's definitely still the case here with Jordan Seaton. Ducks are going against heavyweights like Alabama and Florida and the like on the recruiting trail in this recruitment, but I think he's absolutely one of their top targets that's still on the board here and would be a really nice headliner for Elite Terry along that offensive line.
Certainly good to hear that recruits are thinking of Oregon as like a second family, small town sort of feel. Always good to hear. We're getting to that time in the recruiting cycle where Oregon is going to be actively turning over every stone and trying to flip targets before the first signing day in mid-December. And one guy Oregon is targeting is a Texas commit, and he's an athlete, Aaron Hampton. What do they potentially see in him, Max?
Yeah, Aaron Hampton is one of those recruits that popped up on my radar not too long ago when Oregon was initially recruiting him, and he had taken a visit. And then over the weekend, kind of just searching the internet and Twitter, obviously, I see some buzz between Oregon and Aaron Hampton. I said, oh, that's surprising. I remember that name. That one looks familiar. But I knew that he was committed to Texas out of Dangerfield High School. And this is an interesting one, Justin, because I think they see him playing wide receiver, even though he's listed as an athlete. And that's a position that I think they're still looking to add some talent at here in the 2024 class. Never easy to flip a guy away from Texas to begin with, but if he's from Texas, it maybe is even harder. But kind of what I'm hearing, what I'm being told about this recruitment is that the Ducks are actively working on getting him back out to Eugene for a visit. You would think that the next opportunity would be next weekend against Cal, but I don't know how – I wouldn't expect that visitor list to be too star-studded. I think they're going to maybe try to get as many big-time guys as they can for that November 11th Veterans Day weekend, that big-time matchup against Lincoln Riley and USC. So I think that would be an opportunity that he would probably like to come out for. You just have a little bit more draw with a big game, right? So, 5'10", 175 pounds, really talented playmaker out of the Lone Star State. Oregon is incredibly well connected in the state of Texas, whether you're looking at Will Stein. Antonio Parks is another guy that has pretty strong Texas ties at Oregon. He came over and joined the staff this offseason after previously working with Will Stein at UTSA. So the Ducks have some really strong connections in Texas. That's a huge pipeline state for them. I talked about Aaron Flowers earlier. So there's a lot of good buzz around Oregon recruiting right now, and to have some strong buzz coming out of the state of Texas is right where I think you want to be.
Another flip potential candidate is Gatlin Blair, who's a Boise State wide receiver commit out of Idaho. From what I've heard, he has absolutely blazing speed. Have you heard anything connecting him in Oregon, Max?
Yeah, I'm still doing a little bit of digging on Gatlin Bair out of Burley, Idaho. He is currently committed to Boise State, and that alone is just a tremendous achievement for Andy Avalos and the Broncos out there. Because they're usually not really heavyweight contenders on the recruiting trail. There's a little bit of competition with Oregon again for Jack Ressler out of Mater Dei. He's a wide receiver committed to the Ducks, and I remember he told me his top two before he committed was Oregon and Boise State. So pretty impressive to see that they reeled in a commitment from one of the fastest players, probably the fastest player in the country for 2024. But kind of the latest that I'm hearing is just that they're staying involved. Some of the coaches, Joe Lorig and Junior Adams, went to visit Bair, his high school game, I should say, last week out in Idaho. I also read that Boise State coaches were at that game too. So I don't think it's anything groundbreaking right now with Oregon and Gatlin Bair. I think the important thing to know here for the 6'2", 195-pound pass catcher is that he's actually not going to be eligible for college football. I shouldn't say eligible, but he doesn't plan to play his college football until 2026, actually. He is a mission guy, so 2-year mission is the plan right now for Bair after he graduates in that December, January timeframe. But speed is huge. I mean, speed is almost the name of the game when you're talking about the skill positions. Oregon's been going after some speedster wide receivers in the past, and they've struck out. I'm thinking about guys like Jalen Waddle, is one that they were going after. Xavier Worthy. They went to Alabama and Texas, respectively. So I think that speed is obviously a tremendous asset in college football and really any sport, but Gatlin's got plenty of it, 10.15 in the 100 meters, and that's definitely a guy that they're going to stay on as long as they can. And who knows, maybe we're talking about a close race with Oregon and Boise State, or I bet some other schools that were in his finalists like Michigan and Nebraska. I would wager that they're not giving up just yet.
Yeah, you certainly can't give up on that type of speed. Max, great stuff as usual. And for folks looking for more on Oregon recruiting, they can find you on Twitter at mtorresports, as well as your content on Ducks Digest and the Ducks Dish podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We really appreciate you giving the latest here, and thanks for being here as always.
All right. Thanks for having me, Justin. Appreciate it.